The Charlotte Ledger Podcast is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Banks, and you're listening to the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. For more information on the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com. Today, we're talking about farmland, and in particular, the Carolina Farms Fund. It's a new initiative of the Conservation Fund, which is a national nonprofit dedicated to environmental preservation and economic development. The Charlotte region is on track to lose nearly 19,400 acres of farmland by 2040. And the Carolina Farms Fund has a goal of raising $17 million over the course of 10 years. And the Carolina Farms Fund aims to protect 5,000 acres in the Charlotte region as working farms and to match farmers to those properties with a path toward ownership. The fund was started in November of 2023 by Tim Belk, the former chairman and CEO of Belk. Tim is actually here with us today to talk about the Carolina Farms Fund. Tim and his wife, Sarah, started an organic farm in 2017 located outside of Charlotte called Wild Hope Farm, which their daughter, Peanut, now leads. We also have Aaron Newton with us today, who is the Carolina Farms Fund's program manager. Before joining the fund last year, Aaron worked in agriculture finance and helped train new and beginning farmers. And finally, we have Cherie Jzar with us on the podcast today. Cherie and her husband, Wisdom, own Deep Roots CPS Farm, which was the first farm to partner with the Carolina Farms Fund. Cherie is also a certified professional urban planner with a background in urban agriculture. Tim, Aaron, and Cherie, welcome to the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. I've got a lot of questions. First, let's start with you, Tim, if that's okay. Tell us about what inspired you to start the Carolina Farms Fund and where your passion for farming comes from.
I guess maybe it started with having started up an organic farm in Chester and learning about farming and working with my daughter and a farm manager and building it. And so that was a steep learning curve. And we were watching this pilot of the Conservation Fund in Atlanta, which we thought was exciting and had potential. And it involved conserving green space around Atlanta as working farms. And amazingly, matching farmers to those properties and helping them become owners. So I thought, wow, how can anybody do all that? And they were actually doing it. And then they had a third pillar of their program, which was getting agreements from local higher ed institutions like Emory. Emory was a part of this pilot. They were actually the originator of it, who wanted to dedicate a percentage of their food needs to local. And so, one more amazing part of that, over 3 years or so, they decided, hey, this pilot works. And Emory felt really good about it. And they decided to expand to Chicago. And as they started to expand, we were watching in Charlotte and we waved our hand and said, hey, we think this will resonate in Charlotte. Would you consider us? And they did. And we launched last November. So that's kind of how we got involved. It's, I think, an amazing program worth investing time in. And we're in the process of trying to get the community in this 15 county footprint. And this is not just a Charlotte initiative. This is something that we feel is broadly based in this 15 county region. And we think that over 10 years, we can conserve 5,000 acres as working farms and potentially help 150 farmers become owners. So there's just a lot of potential here. It's exciting.
Aaron, I want to talk to you a little bit too about your role in getting the Carolina Farms Fund off the ground and what it's been like to kind of build it and lay that groundwork.
Well, certainly, Lindsey, I'd like to take just a little bit of a step back to frame. Tim did a great job of sharing how we courted the Farms Fund to come here to Charlotte, but I wanted to put that in the context of the Farms Fund a little bit more broadly. The Farms Fund is a program within the Conservation Fund, which is a nonprofit organization that was started in 1985. And I think it's a unique organization in that it has a dual mission of both conserving land and helping to support the economic vitality of rural communities. To date, the Conservation Fund has conserved more than 9 million acres, 3 million of which are working lands. And then in 2021, the Conservation Fund decided to pilot a special program, the Farms Fund, that would aim to also do two things, which are to conserve farmland and to give next generation farmers affordable access to land. Land access is one of the most difficult parts of starting a career in agriculture. Unless you're one of the very lucky, roughly 1% of the population that farms for a living, unless your family has farmland already, it's difficult to get access to start a farm business. And so in 2021, the Farms Fund said, hey, let's start a program that does both of these things, conserves farmland in and around metropolitan areas, and also gives next generation farmers a patient pathway to affordable access to that land. And so Atlanta now has 12 farms in the program. The Chicago expansion included 5 farms. And then as Tim described, we were lucky enough through the persistence of Tim and others to court the Farms Fund, to court the Conservation Fund, to bring the Farms Fund program here to the Carolinas. And Cherie and Wisdom are the first farm here in the Carolina Farms Fund.
I know part of the Carolina Farms Fund is raising $17 million over the course of 10 years. And so I was kind of curious on how that's been going. I know the fund just started in November of 2023, so you're not even at the year mark yet. But I was just curious, how has it been going?
We're encouraged by the early results. We do have a need over 10 years to raise $17 million in private funds. And to complement those private funds, we've got to raise $16 million in public funds. That's the easement money. So there are 2 buckets we have to fill in order to fund this initiative. And we've raised $4 million in private funds toward that 17 goal. We haven't really gotten started that much in the national fundraising effort, but we're working on it. And in terms of the public funding, Aaron and others have really made some good headway toward accessing dollars for easement purchases.
I'm also curious too, when you talk about, raising these private and public funds, who exactly are you looking for or looking toward to donate or, to help with the fundraising?
So Lindsey, that's a good question. We're exploring, discovering that we're still in the early stages. We have individuals who have contributed at this point, and we have a foundation. So we think the private funding will come from those sources. There are a lot of different types of foundations. And I'd say another category of, support for us to probe and hopefully get some support from are corporations. So those are 3 sources that provide the private funding. So we're encouraged to see, that those different sources emerge for easement money.
Okay, great. And you did kind of touch on it a little bit, but I did want to ask, how are farms getting connected with the Farms Fund?
We are certainly doing outreach. We've had some media coverage from the very beginning. We held a launch event last November 2023. We held a really amazing and successful event with around 200 people. It was a panel discussion with the Commissioner of Agriculture from North Carolina, Steve Troxler, a local farmer who has put some of her land into conservation, Vicki Porter from Cabarrus County, and Christian Barsa, who's the national director of the Farms Fund for the Conservation Fund. And we had a wonderful panel discussion at the Innovation Barn here in Charlotte. As I mentioned, had around 200 people. I've already had farmers reach out to me who attended that event who are interested. But I think over time, what happens is word of mouth. Farmers talk to each other a lot about what works and what doesn't on all things farming. So I think over time, as more farmers come into the program, they're going to be out there talking about their experience, and they're going to be out there talking about the Farms Fund, and it'll give us a chance to meet more farmers, develop relationships, and talk about when might be a good time for those farmers to expand.
I know you've also held some meetings for a kind of a show and tell with leaders of farmers markets. Their eyes and ears out there.
It's true. We've held a number of smaller gatherings, and we'll continue to do this into 2025, where we meet with some of those partnering organizations I mentioned. Farmers markets are an important part of many small farms accessing markets. And so we did last year hold an event where we had many of the farmers market managers from markets across the Charlotte region. We got them all in the room, and we had lunch, and we talked about a number of topics, but those topics included the Farms Fund. There are other groups, cooperative extension, soil and water conservation district boards, elected officials, individuals who we'd love to get together within specific communities and share this message so that they can go out then and tell farmers about what we have to offer.
That's awesome. And then I know too, it's been about a year ago now that I wrote a story about Mecklenburg County and how farmland is shrinking and how development has a lot to do with that. And then also you kind of mentioned too with family farms and, maybe children that are inheriting the farms and the farmland, maybe just aren't interested anymore in keeping it running. And a developer comes in, offers them a lot of money, and then ultimately sells that farmland. And I know a goal of the Farms Fund is to preserve 5,000 acres within 75 miles of Charlotte. And so I'm just curious, whenever you're, helping farms expand and grow, where are you getting this extra land from? Are you kind of going in to maybe some of these farms that already exist that are interested in selling, and are you purchasing it from them? I guess, because I know that was kind of the sentiment just talking last year to farmers and other experts in the industry. The thing that I heard a lot was, one of the few things we're not making any more of is land. And it seems obvious, but when you actually think about it, I mean, it is true. And it definitely, I could see it being a concern.
Yeah, certainly. Lindsey, in terms of wins, I think this is another win in that the farmers in our program are able to access a patient pathway to affordable farmland ownership. But there are many, many people who own farmland in and around that 50, 75-mile range outside of metropolitan areas who, as you mentioned, don't have children who are going to come back and work the farm, but would rather see it stay in agriculture. And so we can provide a win for those landowners by purchasing that property, conserving it. It stays in agriculture, which makes them happy. And then we're able to pair it with a farmer. And so it's actively being worked. It's actually providing food for our community. So yes, I think that being able to offer another possibility for the sale of their land, not necessarily to, a low density housing developer, but offering it, selling it to the Farms Fund so that we can place a farmer on there, have a permanent conservation easement so that they know it will stay in agriculture forever. That's I think that's an option that I think many landowners are going to see it as the next best thing to someone from their family coming back to the farm to work it going into the future.
I did want to ask you as well about, challenges and successes that you've had so far since last November. Has there been anything that stood out to you over this past year? And, as program manager, what have been some of those challenges? And then on the opposite end, what have been some successes?
The biggest challenge has been explaining the model, because the model it's not complicated, but it takes a little while to fully understand. We're purchasing farmland that we have matched with a farmer in our program. In other words, we were finding a farmer who is ready to expand his or her operation, but needs more land to do that. Then we're finding the farm and we purchase it. We create a lease to own agreement with the farmer that we've matched to the property. And then we conserve the property, which reduces the overall market value of the property. And then towards the end of the lease agreement, we sell the property to the farmer at that reduced price. And during that lease period, we want to be supportive of the farmer in any way that we can, including helping to connect the farmer with partners within the community that can help. And so it's at once simple and has a lot of moving parts to it. So I'd say the biggest challenge has been explaining that model to farmers, to funders, to supporters, to landowners in a way that they can fully grasp what it is we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. I'd say sort of tongue in cheek, another challenge has been that we really have had almost overwhelming interest in the program, which is great, from all different types of people with all different types of interest in the program. So sort of prioritizing and making sure that we're sharing our model and forging partnerships as best as possible has been a great challenge to have. In terms of success, we've had some great success on the funding side. And Tim mentioned now we've raised a considerable amount of money so far, although we are, hoping to continue that trend. We do need to raise more money for farmland acquisition. We've had one farm purchase now and a signed lease agreement with Cherie and Wisdom and Deep Roots, which is definitely a win. We've also, and Tim alluded to this earlier, we've had success in raising funds towards easement dollars, the purchase of easement dollars.
Let me chime in to piggyback with what you said. I say there are two challenges. One of them is building the farmer pipeline. And, it's to become an owner, sign a mortgage, step up and scale up, your farm production. That's a scary thing. And is this going to be a good thing for the farmer? And do they have the confidence to step up in this manner? Those are all really big questions. And so, trying to give people the confidence, let them know they're going to get support in several different ways. It takes a while for that to come across, and Cherie can probably speak to that in a very authentic way. So building the farmer pipeline is one thing. It takes a while for that to occur, and word of mouth, and we're starting to see a little momentum there. And then the second is a lot of people see the need for preserving green space around this Charlotte urban metro area going out 75 miles. A lot of people see the need for that. When you talk about preserving it as working farms, that becomes, adds another question to it. But it's an important part of the conservation program. It takes a little bit more explaining to do in order to win the embrace and support of people.
How much does farmland cost?
The cost of farmland in the Charlotte region varies. The closer you get to uptown, the more expensive land prices will be. Part of the reason for this 50 to 75 mile target zone is because that's about the point at which you are outside the city far enough that the land prices begin to drop off, but you're still close enough to be able to access the markets. You're not going to see land prices less than around $8,000 per acre. That's unimproved land. This is raw land with no utilities, existing utilities, or maybe it does have electric and water, but that's it. There's no structures. There's no infrastructure. But if you identify land that is close to one of the other small towns outside of, or increasingly large towns outside of the Charlotte area, you're going to see an increase in the price of land that's going to head up towards, 15, 20,000 an acre or more. And then if you start to look at land that has been improved in some fashion, that has infrastructure on it, that cost could go even higher.
And how many farmers are you currently working with?
We have identified more than 30 farmers in the Charlotte region who have expressed interest. Now, we're not going to be able to work with all of those farmers. Many of them are quite ready to expand their farm business at this time. I would say a better answer is to say that at this time, we're actively working with 5 other farmers who look like within the next 12 to 18 months would likely be a fit for the Farms Fund and would be ready to consider joining the program and actively looking for a property that would fit their farm business development plan.
Well, I think that's a good segue to Cherie. She and Deep Roots CPS Farm are one of the farms that you're currently working with. So Cherie, can you tell us a little bit about Deep Roots CPS Farm, where you're located and what kind of crops you produce?
Yes. So thank you. I'm so honored to be here and share a little bit. So CPS stands for Community Planning Solution. And the reason why we call ourselves Community Planning Solutions, because we feel like farming has a huge community engagement component that speaks to the work that we do, not only to grow produce, but to engage the community, to be in community with their farmers, to be connected to the land and care about the environment. And so we have that as sort of to the core of what we do. But we are a urban agriculture business where farm is a one part of it, that we grow what the USDA would call specialty crops, but that's just seasonal vegetables. And we have a somewhat diverse market, not as diverse as we would like. We sell our produce direct to consumers through the farmers markets that we are in. And then we have relationships with some local chefs and restaurants. And we haven't gone into the food hub, but we're hoping with this scale up that we do. Also, a part of our agricultural business is we have what they call agritourism and events. So we host farm dinners. We have a festival every other year on our farm. And we do value-added products for farmers. That's something that you take, something that you grow or produce on your farm, and you make it into something else. And one of the things that we're really good at is creating black garlic. And we sell that at our markets. And we started in 2019 formally, meaning we organized our business in 2019. But prior to then, we were just homesteaders, and really our love and passion for farming came out of a desire to grow and have healthy food for our children. We have 5 children. And then we quickly found out that there's a space in our region for farming as a business. And so we started a business in 2019. We actually started farming on the land we're farming in right now in Northwest Charlotte in 2022. We purchased the land in 2021 in December. Prior to that, we were farming different plots throughout the city, including our home plot, which was less than 1/8 of an acre, from 2019 to 2022. So we're in an area of Charlotte called the Oakdale area. It's off of Betty's Ford Road. It's Northwest Charlotte.
And then did you say how many acres you currently have in Northwest Charlotte?
Yeah, we're farming on 7 acres.
Can you kind of talk to me now a little bit about connecting with the Carolina Farms Fund and kind of what that's been like and what your hope is for your farm with working with the Farms Fund?
Yeah, you know what? So we've been like journaling our whole journey in farming since we began. And I went back and looked at our journal, and in October of 2022, we received an invitation directly from Stacy Funderburk, who at the time, him and Christian were the ones who came to Charlotte and did this big presentation, an invitation about expanding into the Charlotte region. And I think they wanted to talk with farmers specifically to basically share this information about what they were doing. And it's so ironic that that meeting was exactly 3 years to the date of when we started our farm business. It was a meeting at Renthrow Hardware. I believe Tim Belk was at that meeting, and they sort of laid out the plan and how they wanted to expand the program into the Charlotte metro area. And I remember at that time, there was a lot of questions about, where the land was. Of course, farmers are always talking to one another and thinking, man, we struggled when we were looking for the 7-acre property to actually close on a property. And I believe it's because the landowner at the time wanted it to remain a farm, because we had made many offers. I say about 7 offers on land, and we were outbid, cash offers. We, as someone with a mortgage, could not compete with that. So we were really wondering how this worked, and just hearing how it has so many, I think, dual purposes in supporting farmers, conserving land, supporting existing landowners who also had a desire to keep their farms in agriculture, even though they weren't going to be the owners. And then the support that, it's a scary thing to go from 7 acres to 44 acres, which what we're doing. But, farming is a business as well as a skill and a craft. So we needed that business support, somebody to help us with, mapping out our business, a new business plan, and really envisioning how we may be able to scale up our business. We had the interest from many in our region, food hubs and institutions, schools, about, wanting to have local food, but we just couldn't meet that capacity on the land that we're currently farming on. We actually needed more land in which to do that.
Is your expansion, is it happening right next door, or is it in a different location?
Yeah, so no, it's not happening next door. It's actually in Union County. So we're farming in Mecklenburg County, Northwest Mecklenburg. And so the expansion, the new land that we'll be farming on, is about 50 minutes away from our current farm site.
I imagine you all probably have a different perspective. And so I'm curious, and the answer does, maybe seem a little bit obvious, but I think it's good to kind of to talk about it. Why is having this fund and this program so important, especially right now?
Well, I can say as a farmer that, I think Aaron spoke to this earlier, one of the biggest barriers is land access. And that doesn't stop once you get access to land. I think you can see that through and through in that Atlanta model, where there were a lot of urban farmers who then got the chance to scale up, and it's made a significant change in their business. And that's what I think it will do to us. When we started looking for land to farm on, wanting to be in Northwest Mecklenburg or Northwest Charlotte, because we wanted to be closest to the community that we were really seeing had the most difficulties with food access. Land prices in 2021 were between $75,000 to $100,000 per acre. I could not imagine if you are a new and beginning farmer, young farmer, or those who were historically underrepresented in sort of the smart farming space, having the capital in which to acquire that. For me, I think because we're losing farmland at the degree we are, having this commitment from the Conservation Fund and the Carolina Farms Fund to help sort of traverse that barrier for a farmer is important. It's an important part of the partnership to sustain local farming, provide local foods, and then be stewards of the environment.
I'd say there are many reasons here, but just to focus the question, why is it so important? Number one, green space is rapidly disappearing around this growing metro area, as you might expect. And, we have the opportunity here to turn that green space into working farms that can be producing businesses, and they can produce local, fresh produce. And if we can hook that produce up to local demand, it is all a good thing. And if we can help aspiring farmers who aren't owners today, you heard that Wisdom and Cherie are already owners. Most of the farmers in this program haven't had that opportunity yet, but aspire to it. If we can help them step up in that way and scale up, it's a great opportunity.
And Aaron, anything to add?
I'd say, most near and dear to my heart, this patient pathway to farmland ownership. And I think what's exciting to me is when you look at what Cherie and Wisdom have been able to do on the 7-acre property that they farm now in relatively short period of time, it just gets you excited to see what they'll be able to do with access to additional acreage to be able to grow their farm business. So to be able to have a program like that in our community that's making that option available to farmers in our region, that's exciting to me. And it's exciting that we've been able to, that we're starting to develop this program here in the Charlotte region.
I want to share just one brief story that happened on Monday when we were traveling with Commissioner Troxler. We wanted to show him what this program is, how it helps farmers, and they can go from small scale to sort of mid-size. Think about it that way, because he deals with traditional ag, and we're dealing with small to mid-sized farms. And at one point when we were at Cherie's new property at Deep Roots Monroe, he turned to her and he said, "Do you have the determination?" Something. I don't remember exactly the question, Cherie, but she looked at him and smiled and said, "Yes, we do." And when he spoke in the panel that evening, he gave quite a testimony on behalf of Cherie and Wisdom. And he said, these two have what it takes. They're going to work through the hardships. They're going to persist. They're going to find a way to make it work. And that's what good farmers always do. He said, "I have a lot of confidence here." I don't know, Cherie, if you remember that.
I do. And I think to me also, Tim, I remember when you said to me, after the announcement came out and you said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Excited, but super nervous." And you said, you wouldn't be going into this the right way if you didn't have a combination of those two feelings. And I think that's what the tenaciousness, I don't know, that's what we have as farmers. Wisdom and I know that it's not easy because one of your business partners is Mother Nature. I think everybody says, but farmers more so feel it more than anybody else. And you just really have to stay committed. And many years from now, we'll be looking back or hearing this podcast or looking back to all of the people who had a part to play in making this work and really, singing their praises, because this is very important, not for just right now, but for the future of our community and children.
Well, that sounds like a great place to end it. Tim, Aaron, and Cherie, thank you so much for joining me today on the Charlotte Ledger podcast. To our listeners, thanks for listening. For more information on the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.